The envelope sat on Luca Ferretti's desk, cream-colored and expensive, with Elena Costa's resignation printed in perfect typescript. 3 days. That's how long the most sought-after child psychologist in Milan had lasted with his nephew. The others before her had managed less. 2 days, 1 day, 6 hours. The record was held by a woman with 20 years of experience who'd walked out after Matteo locked her in the wine cellar and disappeared into the gardens for 11 hours. Luca stood at his office window, watching his men search the estate grounds again. Matteo was out there somewhere, small and silent and unreachable. 6 years old, dark hair like his mother's, eyes that looked through people instead of at them. The boy hadn't spoken a complete sentence in 4 months. Not since the funeral. Not since they'd lowered Adriana into the ground and Matteo had stood there like a statue, his small hand cold in Luca's palm. "We found him," Marco said from the doorway. "East Garden, behind the fountain." "Alone?" "Always alone." Luca descended the marble staircase, his footsteps echoing through the empty house. Empty. That was the word that haunted him now. He'd built this estate to be a fortress, impenetrable and secure. But Adriana had been right when she'd called it a mausoleum. His sister had refused to bring Matteo here when she was alive, had kept the boy in a modest apartment across the city, working double shifts at the hospital to afford it. She'd wanted him away from this world, away from the violence and the blood and the calculations that kept Luca's empire running. Then a bomb meant for Luca had found her car instead. Wrong target, right family. And now Matteo was here in the fortress Adriana had spent 6 years avoiding, and Luca had no idea how to reach him. The boy sat behind the marble fountain, knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. He didn't look up when Luca approached, didn't flinch, didn't run. He just sat there, existing in a space, beyond touch. "Matteo," Luca said quietly. "Nothing. Dr. Costa left, but I'll find someone else. Someone better." The boy's jaw tightened slightly. That was the only indication he'd heard. Luca crouched down, keeping his distance. "I know you're angry. I know this isn't where you want to be, but it's the safest place for you right now. The people who hurt your mother, they're still out there, and they know about you." Matteo's eyes finally moved, sliding toward Luca with something that might have been contempt or might have been grief. Then he stood and walked away, back toward the house, small and straight-backed and utterly alone. Signora Bianchi was waiting in the foyer. The housekeeper had raised Luca and Adriana after their parents died, had held them both through nightmares and losses, and now she looked at Luca with something like pity. "That child doesn't need another professional," she said quietly. "He needs someone who understands being broken." "I've hired the best—" "You've hired credentials," Signora Bianchi interrupted. "Degrees and recommendations and people who've studied trauma in textbooks. But Matteo doesn't need theory. He needs someone who's lived it." Luca's phone rang. Dr. Camilla Rossi, the pediatrician who'd treated Matteo after the bombing. He answered. "Signor Ferretti," she said carefully. "Elena called me. She told me about Matteo, and about her recommendation." "What recommendation?" "There was a woman who worked at the hospital, Iris Navarro. She cleaned the pediatric psychiatric wing at night. The children there, the ones in isolation, the ones who'd been abused or abandoned or traumatized beyond reach, they responded to her. Not because she was trained, but because she understood. Elena thought she might help." "A janitor. A survivor." Dr. Rossi's voice was firm. "I saw her arms once, Signor Ferretti. Burns, scars, the kind that tell a story no child should have to live through. She doesn't work here anymore. She quit 2 weeks ago. But Father Marco De Luca at St. Teresa's might know where she is. She volunteered there." Luca ended the call and looked at Signora Bianchi. A janitor with scars. Maybe that's exactly what he needs. St. Teresa's church sat wedged between a bakery and an abandoned textile factory, its stone facade darkened by decades of exhaust and weather. Luca entered alone, leaving his guards outside. The interior smelled like incense and old wood, lit by rows of prayer candles that cast shadows across the pews. Father Marco De Luca knelt at the altar, his head bowed. He was younger than Luca expected, maybe 40, with weathered hands and kind eyes that had seen too much. "Luca Ferretti," the priest said without turning, "I've been expecting you." "You know why I'm here." "Iris." Father Marco stood, brushing dust from his cassock. "Everyone who comes looking for her wants something. What do you want?" "I have a nephew who won't speak, who runs from everyone trying to help him. Dr. Rossi said Iris worked with children like that." "She did, but Iris isn't a tool you can hire and deploy. She's a person who's been through hell and barely made it out." Father Marco's gaze was steady. "What makes you think she'd want anything to do with your world?" "Because my world is where children like Matteo end up when everything else fails. And if she understands that, maybe she'll help." Father Marco studied him for a long moment. "She comes here Tuesday and Thursday mornings, early, before dawn. She arranges flowers and cleans the pews. She doesn't talk much, but she's here. If you want to meet her, come Thursday, alone. No guards, no weapons, no intimidation, just you." "Why would she agree to meet me?" "She won't, not at first. But if you're willing to wait, to show her you're not another man trying to control her, she might listen." The priest paused. "Iris spent 18 years being owned. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can purchase her cooperation." Thursday. Morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of dawn that made the city feel like it was holding its breath. Luca entered St. Teresa's at 5:45, wearing jeans and a dark sweater instead of his usual suit. The church was silent except for the soft rustle of fabric and the quiet clink of glass. A woman knelt near the altar, arranging white lilies in ceramic vases. Her hair was dark brown, pulled into a simple braid that fell between her shoulder blades. She wore faded jeans, work boots, and a gray sweater that had been mended at the elbows. Her movements were careful, economical, like someone who'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Luca approached slowly. "Iris Navarro." Her hand stilled. She didn't turn immediately, and when she did, her face was carefully neutral. 26, maybe 27, pale skin, tired eyes, unremarkable features that would make her easy to overlook in a crowd, which, Luca realized, was probably intentional. "I don't know you," she said quietly. "Luca Ferretti." Recognition flickered across her face. Not fear, just awareness. She set down the lily stem and stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. "I don't work at the hospital anymore." "I know. Dr. Rossi told me." "Then why are you here?" "I have a nephew, 6 years old. He lost his mother 4 months ago. Since then, he's refused every form of help. Every therapist, every nanny, every specialist I've brought in. He either runs or shuts down completely." Luca kept his voice even, factual. "Dr. Rossi said you worked with children who couldn't be reached. I need to know why." Iris looked away, her gaze moving to the stained glass windows above the altar. "I'm not qualified to help you." "I'm not asking for qualifications. I'm asking for understanding." "Understanding of what?" "What it's like when everyone tries to fix you and all you want is for them to leave you alone. What it's like to carry something so heavy that speaking feels impossible." Luca paused. "What it's like to want to disappear." Iris's expression didn't change, but her fingers twisted together, a nervous gesture that betrayed the calm mask. "You don't know anything about me. I know you have scars. I know you worked with traumatized children at night in the psychiatric wing, where the worst cases go. I know those children calmed around you when no one else could reach them." Luca took a step closer, careful not to invade her space. "And I know you quit suddenly, without notice, which means you're running from something. So yes, I think you understand exactly what my nephew is going through." Iris was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you want from me?" 1 hour. Just meet him. If you walk away after that, I won't follow. I won't send anyone after you. You'll never hear from me again." "And if I refuse?" Then I'll respect that. But I'm asking because I've tried everything else and nothing has worked. Elena Costa is one of the best in the country, and she lasted 3 days. That means something is different about Matteo, something I don't understand, and I think you might. Iris looked at him directly for the first time, her gaze searching his face for signs of deception or manipulation. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. 1 hour, she said. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., and I don't take money for this. Agreed. And if he wants me to leave, I leave immediately. No arguments. Agreed. Iris turned back to her flowers, dismissing him. Luca left the church feeling something he hadn't felt in months, a small fragile thread of hope. The Ferretti estate looked different through Iris's eyes. She sat in the back of Luca's car, watching the city fall away as they climbed into the hills, and all she could see was another prison. Beautiful, expensive, but still a cage. The iron gates, the stone walls, the armed guards patrolling the perimeter, it all reminded her of the house she'd grown up in, where her stepfather had controlled every entrance and exit, every moment of freedom. Matteo doesn't know you're coming, Luca said from the driver's seat. He'd insisted on driving himself. No guards, no entourage. I thought it would be better if he wasn't prepared. You mean you thought he'd run if he knew? Yes. Iris appreciated the honesty. Where is he? The garden. He spends most of his time there now, under an oak tree near the east wall, as far from the house as he can get without leaving the grounds. The car stopped in the circular driveway. Luca opened her door and Iris stepped out into cold morning air that smelled like roses and earth. The estate was immaculate, too perfect, like a photograph instead of a home. She followed Luca through the marble foyer, past oil paintings and antique furniture that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, through French doors that opened onto sprawling gardens. And there, beneath an ancient oak tree, sat a small boy, with his back against the trunk, Matteo. He was tiny, fragile, in the way children become when they stop eating properly. Dark hair fell into his eyes. His clothes were expensive, pressed slacks, a white button-down shirt, but they hung on him like they'd been bought for someone bigger. He was drawing in the dirt with a stick, making shapes that might have been letters, or might have been nothing at all. Luca stopped at the edge of the garden. I'll wait here. Iris walked forward slowly, her footsteps quiet on the grass. She stopped about 6 feet from the tree and sat down cross-legged, not trying to get closer, not trying to engage. She just sat. Matteo's hand stilled. He didn't look up, but his shoulders tensed slightly. Iris waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the air, and still she sat in silence. Finally, Matteo's eyes flicked toward her. Dark eyes exactly like the photographs Luca had shown her. Wary, old beyond their years. Iris didn't smile, didn't speak. She just reached up and slowly rolled up her left sleeve. The scars started at her wrist and disappeared beneath the fabric. Burn marks, some small and circular like cigarette brands, others larger and irregular from prolonged contact with heat. The skin was silvered and puckered, evidence of poor healing and no medical care. Matteo stared. Iris rolled up her right sleeve. More scars, but these were different. Thin, straight lines, deliberate cuts that had been made with precision and repeated over time. I got these when I was younger, Iris said quietly. Her voice was calm, matter of fact, like she was discussing the weather. The burns are from my stepfather. He used to hold lit cigarettes against my arms when I made him angry, which was often because existing made him angry. The cuts are from me later, when I was 14 and 15, and I thought physical pain was easier to control than the pain inside. Matteo's eyes were wide now, fixed on her arms. I know what people say when something bad happens, Iris continued. They say it'll get better. They say you're strong. They say time heals all wounds. And maybe that's true for some people. But when you're in it, when you're drowning, those words feel like lies, because it doesn't feel like it'll ever get better. It just feels like you're trapped in something you can't escape. The boy's chin trembled slightly. I ran away 17 times before I turned 18, Iris said. I got very good at it. I learned which streets had the best hiding places, which shelters didn't ask questions, which people would help and which would hurt. I learned to move quietly, to disappear, to make myself invisible. But you know what I didn't learn? How to stop running. Even after I got free, even after my stepfather couldn't touch me anymore, I kept running, because I didn't know how to do anything else. Matteo's stick fell from his hand. You don't have to talk to me, Iris said. You don't have to trust me. You don't even have to like me. But if you want to run, I'll run with you. And if you want to sit here in silence, I'll sit here too. And when you're ready to stop, whenever that is, I'll stop with you. For a long moment, nothing happened. The garden was silent except for birds and the distant hum of the city below. Then Matteo stood. He walked toward Iris slowly, carefully, like he was approaching something that might bolt. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could have reached out and touched him. He looked at her scars again. Then he lifted his small hand and traced one of the burn marks with his finger, so gently it was barely a whisper of contact. Iris held very still. Matteo's eyes filled with tears. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. And then, in a voice like broken glass, he said, "She didn't wake up." The words were so quiet, so raw, that Iris felt them in her chest. "I know," she said softly. "I tried." Matteo's voice cracked. "I shook her. Called her name. I told her to wake up, but she didn't. You did everything you could. Everyone says it's okay." Tears spilled down his cheeks now. "But it's not okay. She's gone, and it's not okay. And they keep lying and saying it will be, and I just want everyone to stop lying." "You're right," Iris said. "It's not okay. And maybe it won't be okay for a long time, maybe never. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means something terrible happened, and you survived it." Matteo stood there shaking, his small body racked with sobs he'd been holding in for 4 months. Then he collapsed forward into Iris's lap, crying like the world was ending. Iris wrapped her arms around him carefully, like he was made of glass, and held him while he broke apart. She didn't shush him, didn't tell him to be brave or strong. She just held him and let him cry. From the edge of the garden, Luca watched the stranger do what he'd been unable to do. He watched his nephew, silent, untouchable Matteo, sob in the arms of a woman he'd met 5 minutes ago. And Luca felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen solid since Adriana's funeral. When Matteo finally quieted, exhausted and hiccuping, Iris stroked his hair gently. "Better?" she asked. Matteo nodded against her shoulder. "Will you tell me her name? Your mother?" "Adriana." The word was muffled but clear. "That's a beautiful name. She smelled like lavender, and she made really good pancakes, and she sang when she cooked." Matteo's voice was steadier now, like speaking about her helped. "She worked at the hospital. She helped sick kids. She sounds like someone special." "She was." Matteo pulled back slightly, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Are you going to leave now? Like the others?" "Do you want me to leave?" Matteo shook his head quickly. "Then I'll come back tomorrow, if that's okay." "Promise?" Iris hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." Iris returned the next day at 9 a.m. She found Matteo waiting under the oak tree, sitting in the exact same spot. When he saw her, something that might have been relief crossed his face. She sat down beside him without speaking. After a few minutes, Matteo said, "Do they still hurt? The scars?" "Not usually. Sometimes when it rains or when it's very cold, they ache a little. But mostly they're just there, reminders." "Of what?" "That I survived, that I got out, that I'm stronger than what happened to me." Matteo pulled his knees to his chest. "I have nightmares about the car, about the fire, about her face. What does she look like in the nightmares? Scared. She's scared and I can't help her. His voice dropped to a whisper. And then I wake up and remember she's dead. And it's worse than the nightmare, because at least in the nightmare, she's still alive. Iris was quiet for a moment, weighing her words. I used to dream about the night I ran away, for years. Every single night. I'd wake up thinking I was still there, still trapped in that house, and it would take me minutes to remember that I'd escaped, that I was safe. The dreams made me so angry because I thought, I'm free now. Why can't my brain understand that? What made them stop? They didn't stop completely, but they got less frequent, less intense. I think it's because I started talking about what happened. Not to therapists or counselors, just to Father Marco sometimes, or to the kids at the hospital. Saying it out loud made it feel less like a secret I had to carry alone. Matteo was silent. Then, Uncle Luca doesn't sleep either. Iris glanced toward the house where she could see Luca's silhouette in a second-floor window. Why not? He walks the halls at night. I hear him. Sometimes he stands outside my door, but he doesn't come in. Matteo's voice was matter-of-fact. I think he's scared too. He thinks I don't know, but I do. He thinks what happened to Mom is his fault. Is it? I don't know. The nannies whisper about it. They say bad people wanted to hurt Uncle Luca, and they hurt Mom instead. They say I shouldn't be here, that Uncle Luca is dangerous. He looked up at Iris. Is he? Iris chose her words carefully. I think your uncle is someone who's done dangerous things, but I also think he loves you very much. And those two things can both be true at the same time. Do you think dangerous people can love? Yes. I think they love differently, maybe. More intensely, more protectively. But yes, they can love. Then Matteo leaned his head against her shoulder. Will you teach me how to not be scared all the time? I'll teach you how to be scared and keep going anyway. How does that sound? Okay. Days became weeks. Iris came every morning, and every morning Matteo was waiting. They developed a routine without planning it, sitting under the oak tree, talking about small things and large things, sometimes in silence, sometimes in long conversations that wandered through memory and pain and hope. Matteo told her about his mother's laugh, how it sounded like wind chimes. He told her about the nightmares that made him afraid to close his eyes. He told her about the anger that lived in his chest, like a burning coal, constant and hot. Iris told him about the streets she'd lived on, the shelters she'd stayed in, the people who'd helped her, and the people who'd hurt her. She told him about Father Marco finding her sleeping in the church and offering her work instead of charity. She told him about the children at the hospital who'd taught her that being broken didn't mean being beyond repair. One morning, 3 weeks after they'd met, Matteo asked, Why did your stepfather hurt you? They were sitting on a stone bench near the fountain today. The weather had turned warm, spring asserting itself, and the garden was alive with color. Because he could, Iris said simply. He was angry at the world, and I was small in there, and he took his anger out on me. I don't think it was personal. I don't think he hated me specifically. I was just convenient. Did your mom know? She knew. But she was scared of him too. She thought if she stayed quiet, if she kept me quiet, it would get better. If she didn't make waves, he'd calm down. Iris's voice was steady, clinical almost. She was wrong. But I understand why she made that choice. Fear makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. Where is she now? She died when I was 16. Heart attack. The doctor said it was stress, but I think it was a broken heart. I think she couldn't live with what was happening and couldn't figure out how to stop it, so her body just gave up. Is that why you ran away? I ran away because after she died, I was alone with him, and without her there, even the small protections disappeared. He got meaner, more violent, and I realized that if I stayed, I'd either die or become like him, so I chose to run. Were you scared? Terrified. I had no money, no plan, nowhere to go. I didn't know if I'd survive a week on the streets, but I was more scared of staying than I was of leaving. And sometimes that's enough. Matteo was quiet, processing. Then he said, I'm glad you ran. Me too. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be here, and I'd be alone. Iris looked at him, this small, serious boy who'd somehow become important to her in the span of 3 weeks. You're not alone, Matteo. Not anymore. Promise? I promise. Luca watched them from his study, a glass of whiskey sitting untouched on his desk. He'd spent 4 months hiring the best professionals money could buy, and they'd all failed. Then this woman, this janitor with scars on her arms and shadows in her eyes, had walked into Matteo's life and simply understood. Signora Bianchi entered with coffee. The boy smiles now. I know. He ate breakfast this morning, all of it, without being asked. I know. You should talk to her. To Iris. Luca's jaw tightened. About what? About keeping her here. Permanently. Signora Bianchi set the coffee down. Not as an employee, as family, because that's what she's become, whether you want to admit it or not. She's here for Matteo. She's here because she sees something worth saving, in him. Maybe in you, too. The housekeeper paused. Don't waste this, Luca. Don't let pride or control ruin it. The threat arrived on a Tuesday. Luca was meeting with his lieutenants when Marco burst in, his face grim. We have a problem. What kind? Victor Orlov. He's been watching the estate. He knows about the boy. Luca's blood went cold. Victor Orlov was a rival who'd been testing boundaries for months, pushing into territory that had been Ferretti-controlled for decades. He was ambitious, ruthless, and smart enough to be dangerous. What does he want? Leverage. He's planning to take Matteo, use him to force you into ceding territory. Marco pulled out surveillance photos, grainy images of men watching the estate from various positions. We've identified his team, 6 men, all experienced. They're planning to move within the week. Luca stood, his mind already calculating. Double the guards, lock down the estate. No one in or out without clearance. Already done, but sir, Matteo is a target now. As long as he's here, he's vulnerable. Where else would he go? Somewhere Orlov doesn't know about, somewhere remote. Luca thought of Matteo finally beginning to heal, finally beginning to speak. And he thought of Iris, who'd promised to stay, who'd become the one person the boy trusted. Find me options, he said. Immediately. Iris arrived the next morning to find the estate transformed. Armed guards patrolled every entrance. The gates had been reinforced overnight. Men in tactical gear moved through the gardens with military precision. Matteo was in the library, pressed against the window, watching it all with wide eyes. What's happening? Iris asked quietly. He turned. Uncle Luca says there are bad people coming. That I have to stay inside where it's safe. Iris felt ice in her veins. Did he say what kind of bad people? The same kind that hurt my mom. Matteo's voice was small. He says I can't go outside anymore, that it's not safe. Iris found Luca in his study, surrounded by maps and tactical reports. What is this? He looked up. A precaution. You've turned this place into a war zone. Matteo is terrified. Matteo is safe. He's a prisoner. Iris's voice rose. You can't lock him inside and expect him to continue healing. He needs space, air, freedom. He needs to be alive. Luca cut her off, his voice hard. There's a man named Victor Orlov who wants to use him to destroy me. If he succeeds, Matteo won't be locked inside. He'll be dead. So yes, I'm keeping him here. I'm protecting him. And if you don't approve, you're welcome to leave. Iris stared at him. This is what you do, isn't it? When you're scared, you control. You build walls and hire guards and lock everyone inside. But you can't control this, Luca. You can't control trauma. You can't control healing. And you can't keep that boy in a cage and expect him to get better. What would you have me do? Find another way. Move him somewhere safer. Somewhere he can breathe. There is nowhere safer than here. Then make somewhere. Iris held his gaze. Or let me. The plan formed over 72 hours. Iris knew a place, a small cottage in the mountains, 2 hours north, owned by Father Marco's brother. It was remote, invisible, surrounded by forest. No one from Luca's world knew about it. Orloff wouldn't know to look there. It's temporary, Iris explained, spreading a map across Luca's desk. Just until you handle Orloff. A few weeks, maybe a month. But Matteo can be outside there. He can run if he needs to. He can breathe. Luca studied the map. You'd go with him. Yes. Alone? With one guard. Someone Matteo can tolerate. Someone who understands that he's not a prisoner. Iris paused. And you visit. Not every day, because that defeats the purpose. But regularly. He needs to know you're not abandoning him. Who would go? Antonio. The one who works in the garden. Matteo tolerates him. He's quiet, patient, has a daughter around Matteo's age. Luca was silent for a long time, weighing options and risks. Then he nodded. Arrange it. You leave tomorrow before dawn. They left at 4 a.m. on a Wednesday, while the city still slept. Matteo sat between Iris and Antonio in the back seat, clutching a small bag with his favorite books and a photograph of his mother. The city fell away. The mountains rose. By the time the sun crested the peaks, they'd arrived at a cottage that looked like something from a fairy tale. Stone walls, a slate roof, windows that faced the forest. Matteo stepped out of the car and stood very still, breathing deeply. Can I go to the river? He asked. Iris looked at Antonio, who nodded. Stay where we can see you. Matteo ran. Iris watched him go. Watched him splash into the shallows and laugh, actually laugh, for the first time since she'd met him. You're good for him, Antonio said quietly. I'm just here. That's more than anyone else gave him. The days in the mountains were different, slower, gentler. Matteo woke with the sun and explored. He found a family of rabbits living under the cottage. He learned to skip stones on the river. He climbed trees with Antonio's help and came back with scraped knees and dirt under his fingernails, grinning. Iris watched him transform from a silent, hunted thing into something approaching a normal 6-year-old. And in watching him heal, she felt something in herself begin to shift too. She'd spent so many years running, hiding, making herself invisible. But here, with this boy who needed her, she was learning to be present, to be seen, to be still. Luca visited on the 5th day. He arrived alone, driving a nondescript car, dressed in jeans and a dark sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked out of place among the trees, too sharp and controlled for the wilderness. Matteo ran to him immediately, launching himself into Luca's arms. Luca caught him, and for a moment the mask dropped completely. Raw fear and love and relief written across his face. Are the bad people gone? Matteo asked. Not yet. Soon. Will you stay? For today. They walked to the river together. Matteo chattered about the rabbits and the fish he'd seen and the bird that had landed on his hand. Luca listened with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every word, every expression, like he was afraid Matteo might disappear if he looked away. When Matteo ran ahead with Antonio, Luca turned to Iris. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing him when I couldn't. For staying when everyone else left. Iris looked away. I'm not staying forever. I know. Luca's voice was careful. But while you're here, thank you. 4 weeks passed, then 5. Luca dismantled Orloff's operation, methodically, quietly, efficiently, with the precision that had built his empire. He cut off supply lines, turned lieutenants, applied pressure in places Orloff couldn't defend. By the end of the 6th week, Orloff was dead, his network scattered, the threat eliminated. Luca called Iris from the city. It's over. It's safe now. You can come back. There was a long pause. Then Iris said, What if we don't want to? Luca's breath caught. What? Matteo is happy here. He's sleeping through the night. He's eating. He's talking about Adriana without falling apart. The estate is beautiful, but it's also a reminder of everything he lost. What if we stayed here longer? Until he's ready? How much longer? I don't know. Until he decides. Luca was silent, and Iris could hear the calculation happening, the control being wrestled with. Finally, can I visit? Of course. Then stay, as long as he needs. Luca came every weekend after that. He learned to skip stones with Matteo. He helped build a treehouse in the oak behind the cottage. He sat on the porch with Iris in the evenings while Matteo slept, and they talked about things that had nothing to do with violence or empire or survival. One evening, Iris told him about the fire, about pouring gasoline in her stepfather's study while he slept drunk on the couch, about lighting the match, about watching the flames catch and running. He didn't die, she said quietly. But he was burned badly, hospitalized for months. She looked at her hands. I don't regret it. I know I should, but I don't. Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've killed people. Some deserved it. Some were just in the way. I don't regret it either. Does that make us monsters? Maybe. Or maybe it just makes us people who did what we had to do to survive. You saved yourself, Luca said. I respect that. You're saving Matteo. I respect that too. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the acknowledgement that they were both people who'd been broken by their worlds and had somehow found a way to keep going. 6 months after they'd arrived at the cottage, Matteo had transformed completely. He attended the village school now, a small place where no one knew who his uncle was. He had friends. He talked about Adriana with love instead of anguish. He still had hard days, but he knew how to weather them. One evening, as Iris and Luca sat on the porch watching the sunset, Luca said, I bought the cottage. Iris turned. What? From Father Marco's brother. I bought it. 20 acres. The cottage, the river, the forest. He paused. I want you and Matteo to stay, not as a temporary measure, permanently. Luca, I'm not asking you to be an employee. I'm not asking you to be controlled or owned. I'm asking if I can be here, with you, with him, if I can build something different than what I've always known. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. I don't know how to do this, how to be anything other than what I am, but I want to try. For him, for you. Iris stared at him. What about your empire, your business? I have people who can manage it. I'll oversee from a distance, but I won't be in the city anymore. I won't be the face of it. He looked at her directly. I'm choosing this. Choosing you both. If you'll let me. I have nightmares, Luca. I have days where I can't be touched. I have scars that will never fade inside and out. So do I. And I won't be controlled by you or anyone else, ever. I'm not asking for control. I'm asking for a chance. His voice dropped. Please. Iris looked at this dangerous man who'd somehow learned gentleness, who'd chosen to let go of power for the sake of a child, and she felt something settle in her chest that she'd never felt before. Safety, real and solid. Okay, she said. A chance. 1 year later, the cottage had become home. Matteo was 7 now, taller, brighter, more alive. He still missed his mother, always would, but he carried her memory like a gift instead of a wound. Luca had stepped back from his organization almost entirely, appearing only when absolutely necessary. He'd learned to cook, to garden, to sit in silence without needing to fill it with strategy or plans. And Iris had learned that staying wasn't the same as being trapped. That love didn't mean ownership. That home could be built from broken pieces. One morning, Iris and Matteo walked to the river together. The water was clear and cold, running over smooth stones. Iris, Matteo said, skipping a stone. Yeah? Do you think my mom would be happy that I'm okay now? Iris smiled. I think she'd be so proud of you. Do you think she knows Uncle Luca is different now? That he's not scary anymore? I think he's still scary to some people, but not to us, and I think that's what matters. Matteo threw another stone, watching it skip. Then, I used to want to disappear, like you did. But now I think I just wanted someone to see me. Really. See me. Not as the kid whose mom died. Not as the nephew of someone dangerous. Just as me. I see you, Iris said quietly. Exactly as you are. I know. Matteo looked up at her. That's why I stopped running. They stood together in the morning light. Two people who'd learned that survival wasn't the same as living. That being broken wasn't the same as being worthless. That home could be found in the most unexpected places. Behind them, Luca watched from the cottage window, holding a cup of coffee, and for the first time in his life, felt something that wasn't power or control or fear. He felt peace. If you've stayed with this story, if you felt the weight of these scars and the hope of healing, you're in the right place. More stories like this live here.